San Francisco, a city of steep hills and morning fog, had never felt so cold to Mary Johnson. At 65, her silver hair neatly pinned up, her green eyes still held a spark of youthful sharpness, now dulled by grief. Patrick Johnson, her husband, the man with whom she had shared 42 years of life, had just passed away. He died in the hospital after a 2-year battle with a stroke where each day was a struggle between hope and despair. Mary remembered every detail vividly, the hum of the ventilator, the sharp smell of antiseptic, and the final squeeze of his hand. "Everything's taken care of, Mary," he whispered, his voice frail but filled with love. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, unaware that his promise would ignite a family storm. Patrick was no ordinary man. He built a real estate empire from scratch, starting with modest suburban homes and rising to glittering skyscrapers in the city's heart. His fortune, estimated at $46 million, was a figure Mary never cared about. To her, he was the husband, father, and lover who sacrificed everything for their family. She recalled the early days of their marriage in 1983, when they moved into an old wooden house in the suburbs of San Francisco. Patrick worked 16-hour days while Mary gave up her teaching career to care for their children. She sacrificed her own dreams, her imagined travels, to stand by him through every triumph and trial. When he fell ill, she was the one cleaning, cooking, and even learning to change IV tubes to save costs. "You are my strength," Patrick once said, and Mary believed it. But now he was gone, leaving an immense void in her heart. The funeral took place at a small seaside church, the same one where they had married. The sky was gray, the sea breeze fierce, as if trying to sweep everything away. Mary stood there in a simple black dress, clutching a bouquet of white roses, Patrick's favorite flower. Her son John, 40 years old, stood beside her, but his eyes avoided hers. John, once the boy who called her mama, even into his 30s, now addressed her as mother with a cold, dutiful tone. Amelia, her daughter-in-law, a sharp-featured 38-year-old with golden hair and lips always painted red, clung to John's arm. She adjusted her diamond earrings, then leaned in and whispered to Mary, "You won't get a dime of the $46 million, just so we're clear." Those words cut into Mary's heart like a knife. She didn't respond, didn't even blink. Pain, anger, shock, all merged into a hollow emptiness. She looked around, cold embraces from relatives, hollow condolences. John fidgeted with the Rolex Patrick had given him 5 years ago, as if time could erase everything. Amelia maintained her perfect smile, her lipstick pristine even after 3 hours. Mary felt like she was watching a play cast as a minor character pushed to the sidelines. She remembered the years of sacrifice, sleepless nights when John was sick, rushing to the hospital when Amelia gave birth. Now they treated her like an outsider. After the funeral, the family entered the lawyer's office in downtown San Francisco. The air was heavy, a mix of money and polished wood. Mr. Davis, the family lawyer, and an old college friend of Patrick's, sat behind his desk, gold-rimmed glasses glinting. He opened a thick brown envelope, his voice steady as if reading scripture. "This is the last will of Patrick Johnson." Mary's stomach tightened. She had signed countless documents with her husband, but now her name seemed to vanish. "My estate, including all financial and tangible assets valued at approximately $46 million, is bequeathed to my son John Johnson and his wife Amelia Johnson. To my wife Mary Johnson, I leave my love and gratitude." Silence shattered like glass. John bowed his head, avoiding his mother's gaze. Amelia's thin smile widened. "We thought it best not to drag this out. You're comfortable in that little apartment. What, maybe 200 square feet?" Blood rushed to Mary's ears, but it wasn't anger, it was memory. She recalled Patrick's hand brushing hers in the hospital, whispering, "Everything's taken care of." Had he foreseen this? Mr. Davis cleared his throat and let out a sharp chuckle. Amelia's head snapped toward him, her mouth twitching. "This is an interesting will," he said, pushing the envelope aside. "Very clean." "Too clean." John frowned. "What do you mean?" Davis replied calmly. "I've drafted many wills. I didn't prepare this one, and the signature doesn't match Patrick's usual format. In fact, I've never seen this version before." The room froze. Amelia's voice rose half an octave. "We had this notarized by your associate." But Davis shook his head. "That wasn't my associate." Mary felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but with a flicker of hope. Davis continued. "There's another version from 2019 before Patrick's illness worsened. Unless it was legally replaced, that one remains valid." Amelia lunged forward. "Ridiculous. There's no other will." But Davis smiled. "We'll see." Mary knew the game had just begun. After the meeting, Amelia stormed out, her heels clicking like daggers. John followed, still avoiding her eyes. Mary stayed seated, and Davis didn't rush her. Now older, his hair entirely white, his eyes remained sharp. "Do you remember the brown box from your first home?" he asked. "Patrick mentioned it to me a few months ago." Mary nodded, memories flooding back, an ugly cardboard box tucked behind old paint cans in the garage. Patrick used to say, "It'll outlive us both." Returning to her small seaside apartment, Mary rolled down the window, letting the wind slap her face. The condo was clean, minimalist, oppressively silent. She opened a closet and pulled down a suitcase. She hadn't planned to return to the old house where they'd pushed her out for the kids' space. Amelia's voice echoed, "You'll be happier somewhere simpler." Simpler. The word was a mockery. The next morning, Mary arrived at the old house unannounced. Amelia opened the door. Her smile froze in Mary. What a surprise. "I'm just picking up a box from the garage," Mary said. Amelia raised an eyebrow. "We cleaned it out. Anything unnecessary was thrown away." Mary clenched her jaw. "You threw out his things." Amelia's smile widened. "We kept a framed photo." "Help yourself." Mary stepped past her, avoiding John, who stood phone in hand at the top of the stairs. The garage was spotless, with white shelves and labeled plastic bins, everything staged and artificial. She climbed a small ladder, reached behind a Christmas box, and found it, the brown box, dusty corners torn but intact. In her car, she placed it on the passenger seat, hands trembling as she cut the tape. Inside were old receipts, a yellowed baby blanket, a 1983 calendar, and a sealed manila envelope, her name in black ink. Mary. "Only open if they turn against you." Her throat tightened. She opened it, 4 pages, signed, witnessed, stamped, dated. "The valid will is 50% for her, 20% for Amelia, for her care, 15% for the grandchildren in a trust, 10% for a women's education fund, and 5% for John." Then a note. "If they come for it, don't fight. Just show them who you are. I always trusted you more than they understood. P." Mary didn't cry. She sat still, sunlight dancing through the windshield. She felt young again, heart pounding with a secret. This wasn't revenge. It was responsibility, clear and undeniable. "Thank you for being here. Have you ever stayed silent to keep the peace? Or smiled while your heart broke? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more powerful, quiet stories like this, hit follow. Say something below this video, even just one word. Where are you watching from? What time is it? On a late July morning, San Francisco was cloaked in fog that clung to the steep streets. Mary Johnson sat in her small apartment in the Mission District, where dim light filtered through thin curtains, illuminating the coffee table where she placed the old brown box. The box, retrieved from the old suburban house, was like a portal to the past, to the life she and Patrick had built. Mary hadn't yet opened the manila envelope with Patrick's handwritten note. "Mary, only open if they turn against you." It lay there, heavy a promise, waiting to be unveiled. Outside, the sounds of car horns and ocean waves blended, but in Mary's heart there was only a chilling silence, the kind that heralded an approaching family storm. She stood brewing a cup of unsweetened tea, which Patrick used to tease as fancy dishwater. The small apartment, just 200 square feet, as Amelia had mocked, was where Mary moved after being pushed out of the old house. "We need space for the kids," Amelia had said, her voice sweet as candy-coated venom. Mary had nodded, unresisting, thinking it was the way to keep the family harmonious. But now, after Amelia's venomous whisper at the funeral and the forged will, she realized harmony was an illusion. She was no longer the woman who sacrificed to maintain peace. Something was awakening in her, not anger but resolve, like a small flame smoldering beneath ashes. Mary sat, hands trembling, as she cut the tape on the envelope. Inside was the valid will, 4 pages bearing Patrick's signature notarized and stamped from 2019, before his illness weakened him. It allocated 50% of the estate to Mary, 20% to Amelia for her care, 15% to the grandchildren in a trust, 10% to a women's education fund, and 5% to John. The money didn't surprise Mary. She never cared about the numbers. But Patrick's handwritten note pierced her heart. If they come for it, don't fight. Just show them who you are. I always trusted you more than they understood. P. The words were a sharp blade cutting into memories of nights she sat by his side, when he could no longer speak, only holding her hand, as if to keep her close before he left. She closed her eyes, recalling an evening in 1986 when she left Patrick after a fierce argument. She packed a suitcase, left a note, "I need time." Patrick didn't stop her, but when she returned 3 months later, he opened the door, asking no questions, only embracing her tightly. They never spoke of that time, but Mary knew it had left scars on both. Now, holding the will, she wondered if Patrick had foreseen the betrayal of their son and daughter-in-law back then. What had he written in the unsent letters Mr. Davis mentioned? Mary opened the box and found a stack of letters tied with an old rubber band, the paper yellowed. The first, from 1986, brought tears. "Mary, you left, but I kept your coffee mug on the counter. I thought you'd come back. If not, stay safe. P." She folded the letter, tears streaming down, not from sorrow, but from realizing Patrick loved her, even when she didn't love herself. These letters were proof of his quiet sacrifice, not with money or grand words, but with unwavering faith in her. Mary wiped her tears, stood, and opened the window. The sea breeze rushed in, carrying salt and memories. She resolved to meet Mr. Davis the next morning, not just to verify the will, but to reclaim what was hers, not money, but truth. The next morning, Mr. Davis's law office sat on the 12th floor of a gleaming glass building. He greeted Mary with a gentle smile, but his sharp eyes signaled he was ready for a fight. "Did you bring the box?" he asked. Mary placed the brown box on the table, the envelope inside. Davis read it carefully, nodding. "This is the one I drafted in 2019. Patrick was fully lucid when he signed it. He worried Amelia would try something, but not this quickly. Mary frowned. "What do you mean?" Davis sighed, adjusting his glasses. "Amelia set up a fake care agency to receive $10,000 a month from Patrick. Legal, but shady. Patrick knew, but he allowed it, thinking it would keep her around." Mary felt blood rush to her ears. Amelia hadn't just betrayed her, she turned Patrick's love into a transaction. She recalled the final days of her husband's life, when Amelia appeared in designer clothes, always with a perfect smile, but rarely touching him. Mary changed IVs, wiping his mouth when he couldn't eat. Amelia stood there checking her phone as if care was just a paid job. Mary said she didn't love him, her voice low but sharp. Davis nodded. Patrick knew. That's why he left this will and the letters, to protect you. Mary returned to her apartment, heart heavy. She opened another letter from 1999 when John had his first child. "Mary, today you laughed until you cried when Liam spilled on my shirt. I realized I could live in chaos as long as I had you." The simple words struck her heart like a hammer. Patrick was never good at expressing love aloud, but he left an entire world on paper. Mary wondered if John ever knew how much his father loved her, or had Amelia blinded him with the allure of wealth. That night Mary couldn't sleep. She sat by the window watching the city lights flicker. Her phone buzzed with an anonymous text, "Think you can win. Wait for the courtroom." Mary didn't reply, but she knew it was Amelia. Her daughter-in-law's betrayal wasn't just about money, it was an attempt to erase Mary's years of sacrifice, to render her invisible in her own family. She placed her hand on the stack of letters, feeling Patrick's warmth in every word. "I trust you," he wrote. For the first time in weeks, Mary thought she wasn't alone. She stood, took a sheet of paper, and wrote, "To Liam, Lucy, and Emma. If you ever read this, know that I fought not for money, but for the truth." She folded it and placed it in the box beside the will. The fight hadn't started, but Mary was ready. Not for revenge, but to prove that she, the woman who sacrificed everything, still had the right to be heard, seen, and remembered. Mary Johnson stood before the old wooden house in the suburbs of San Francisco, once the heart of her and Patrick's early marriage. The house now felt foreign, the white paint faded, the porch creaking, but the oak tree they planted in 1983 stood tall in the backyard, its branches spreading wide as if embracing memories. Mary clutched the key, the last remnant of the home she once called hers. Amelia and John had taken it over, pushing her out with the excuse of needing space for the kids. But today Mary wasn't here to reclaim the house. She was here for the brown box, something Mr. Davis, the family lawyer, believed held the truth about Patrick's wishes. The San Francisco sky was overcast gray clouds hiding secrets about to be revealed. Mary took a deep breath, trying to shake off the memory of Amelia's venomous whisper at the funeral. "You won't get a dime." Her daughter-in-law's betrayal cut like a blade. But John's silence, her son, who once called her mama with a radiant smile, hurt more. Now he stood behind Amelia, a shadow letting his wife manipulate his father's legacy. Mary tightened her grip, feeling the worn wedding ring on her finger, the only thing she kept from Patrick besides his unsent letters. The door opened and Amelia appeared, her perfect smile like an actor's on stage. "Mary, you came unannounced." Her voice was sweet but cold as the sea breeze. Mary replied calmly, "I'm just picking up something from the garage. I won't be long." Amelia raised an eyebrow, stepping aside. "We've cleaned it out. There's probably nothing left." Mary didn't respond, only stepped past, avoiding looking up the stairs where John stood, phone in hand, eyes averted. Her chest tightened, not with anger, but with the pain of a mother forgotten by her son. The garage was no longer a chaotic archive of memories. White shelves were neatly arranged plastic bins labeled Christmas and old stuff. Everything was so clean it felt artificial, as if Amelia had tried to erase Patrick's traces. Mary climbed a small ladder, her hand searching behind a tall plastic bin. Her heart raced as she touched the corner of the old brown box, covered in dust, its edges frayed. She pulled it down gently, as if handling a precious gem. Amelia stood at the garage door, arms crossed. "Is that thing worth the trip?" Mary didn't answer. She only clutched the box and left, feeling her daughter-in-law's gaze like daggers in her back. In her car, Mary placed the box on the passenger seat, hands trembling as she cut the tape. Inside were fragments of the past receipts from a 1984 grocery store, a yellowed baby blanket of John's, and a manila envelope with Patrick's handwriting, "Mary. Only open if they turn against you." She opened it, revealing the valid will, 4 pages signed, notarized, stamped, dated 2019. It divided the estate fairly, 50% to Mary, 20% to Amelia, 15% to the grandchildren, 10% to a women's education fund, and 5% to John. Attached was a note. "If they come for it, don't fight. Just show them who you are. I always trusted you more than they understood. P." Mary's heart seemed to stop. Patrick had known. He had foreseen the betrayal. She returned to her apartment, the sunset gilding the San Francisco Bay. She opened the box further in her small room, finding a stack of letters tied with a rubber band. The first, from 1986, choked her with emotion. "Mary, you left, but I kept your coffee mug on the counter. I thought you'd come back. If not, stay safe. P." She recalled that year when she left after a fierce argument. She needed space to find herself again, but when she returned, Patrick asked no questions, only held her as if no distance had ever existed. These letters, she realized, were not just love, but proof of their mutual sacrifice. He held faith, she held the family. Mary stood, stepping onto the small balcony, looking down at the bustling street. She thought of John, how he used to chase her in the yard begging for a bedtime story. Now he stood behind Amelia, letting her turn his father's legacy into a tool of control. Mary didn't want war, but couldn't let Amelia erase her years of sacrifice. She recalled the sleepless nights beside Patrick when he couldn't eat, when she wiped his mouth while Amelia appeared in designer clothes checking her watch, as if waiting for a shift to end. Her phone buzzed with an anonymous text, "Think you can win? Wait for the courtroom." Mary knew it was Amelia, but didn't reply. Instead, she opened another letter from 1990. "Mary, today you sang in the kitchen, though you know you're terrible. I listened and thought, if this is the whole world, I don't need more." Tears fell, but Mary didn't sob. She wiped them away, feeling a new strength not for revenge, but to protect Patrick's memory, their love. She called Mr. Davis, her voice firm. "I have the valid will." "And the letters." "What do we do next?" Davis replied, steady. "Bring them to me. Amelia won't let go easily, but you have the truth, and Patrick chose you." Mary nodded, though he couldn't see. She looked out at the bay where waves crashed against rocks. A storm was coming, but this time Mary wasn't afraid. She had sacrificed too much to stay silent. Now was the time to speak not for money, but for honor, love, and herself. Mary Johnson's small apartment in San Francisco's Mission District was filled with the scent of old paper and dried ink from the brown box. Night had fallen, streetlights casting a golden glow through the window, illuminating the stack of letters tied with a rubber band that Patrick had left behind. Mary sat in her old armchair, a cold cup of tea on the table, gently opening the following letter. Each stroke of Patrick's handwriting felt like a living heartbeat, pulling her back to years she thought time and betrayal had erased. Today, after finding the valid will and his note, "Show them who you are." Mary felt a small flame in her heart, not of anger, but of resolve to protect what he left behind, not just the estate, but their love. The letter she held was from 1995, when John turned 15. It was difficult when he rebelled, argued with his mother, and ran away for a few days. "Mary, you didn't sleep last night worrying about John. But as you sat at the kitchen table listing places he might be, I knew you were stronger than you thought. You never give up even when I wished you'd rest." Mary smiled bitterly. She remembered those days driving across San Francisco from Golden Gate Park to the waterfront searching for John. When he returned, she didn't scold him. She only cooked his favorite soup and silently sat with him. Patrick saw it, though she never spoke of it. He always saw. She folded the letter, placing it with the others she'd read. There were dozens spanning the 80s to 2015 before the stroke stole Patrick's health. Each letter was a piece of their marriage, not poetic or perfect, but real. One recounted her burning a pot of stew, and another apologized for forgetting her birthday. One from 2000, when she declined a university job offer to stay home with the family. "You said you didn't regret it, but I saw your eyes. I wish I were good enough to give you back your dream." Mary choked up. She sacrificed her career travels and small dreams, but never blamed Patrick. He was her home, and she chose to stay. She stood walking to the window, looking down at the bustling street. San Francisco never slept, but Mary felt lonelier than ever. John, her son, was now a stranger standing behind Amelia, letting her turn his father's legacy into a power game. She recalled their last real conversation 3 years ago when she visited her grandson Liam. John hugged her, saying, "Mom, thanks for always being there." But now he stayed silent before the forged will, letting Amelia whisper venom at the funeral. Mary wondered, did John know about these letters? Did he understand how much his father loved her? Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Mary hesitated but answered. A woman's voice, gentle but firm. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm Clara, the nurse who cared for Mr. Patrick." Mary frowned vaguely, recalling a middle-aged woman in scrubs humming as she changed IV bags. "I heard about the will dispute," Clara continued. "You should know Amelia didn't care for him as she claims. She was paid $10,000 a month through a fake agency she set up. Patrick knew, but he told me not to say anything. He said you'd find the truth when needed." Mary gripped the phone, feeling the floor tilt. "Are you sure?" she asked. Clara replied, "I kept the transfer receipts. If you need me, I'll testify." The call ended and Mary sat, hands shaking. Amelia hadn't just betrayed her, she turned Patrick's final days into a cold transaction. Mary recalled those months sitting by his bed holding his hand, telling him about planting the oak tree or dancing in the rain at the park. Amelia appeared for a few hours, always on her phone as if he were a burden. Mary had thought it was her way of coping, but now she understood it was calculation. She opened another letter from 2010. Mary, today, you were mad because I forgot our anniversary, but that night you still cooked my favorite dish and watched a movie with me. You never hold a grudge long, and that's why I love you. Mary smiled, tears falling. She remembered that anniversary, wanting to scream, but seeing Patrick at the table, eyes full of remorse, she couldn't. They sacrificed for each other in their own ways, without words, only actions. A knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Liam, her 16-year-old grandson, standing with his backpack slung low. Tall, with Patrick's eyes, he looked worried. "Grandma," he said, voice hesitant, "I heard Mom say you found something. About Grandpa." Mary nodded, inviting him in. He sat eyeing the letters. "He wrote these for you." Mary nodded, handing him one. Liam read, his eyes lighting up. "He really loved you. Mom says you're trying to take the money, but I don't believe it." Mary smiled, touching his shoulder. "Thank you, Liam. But I'm not fighting for money. I'm fighting for your grandpa and for the truth." Liam left, leaving Mary with a spark of hope. She looked out the window, city lights twinkling like lost stars. Clara, Liam. The letters, they were unexpected allies in this battle. Mary didn't want war, but wouldn't let Amelia erase Patrick's memory. She held the night's final letter from 2015. "You said I don't understand women, but I know you even when I don't say it. You're my surest thing." Mary pressed it to her chest. She was no longer just the woman who sacrificed. She was Mary Johnson, and she would show them who she was. Mary Johnson's small apartment in San Francisco's Mission District had become a quiet fortress amid the brewing family storm. Late at night, the golden glow of streetlights seeped through the curtains, illuminating Patrick's stack of letters on the coffee table. Mary sat holding a letter from 2005. "Today you fixed that broken chair in the yard, scolding me for not helping. But you didn't know I stood at the door watching, thinking no one could do it better." She smiled, memories of the backyard flooding back where she and Patrick argued, laughed, and planted the oak tree now towering tall. But her smile faded as she thought of Amelia, her daughter-in-law, trying to erase every trace of her from her husband's legacy. Mary had confirmed the valid will with Mr. Davis, the family lawyer. The 2019 will fairly divided the estate, giving her 50%. Still, it wasn't the money that broke her heart. It was John's betrayal, her son, standing silently behind Amelia, letting her turn their parents' love and sacrifice into a power game. Clara, Patrick's former nurse, had revealed a bitter truth. Amelia received $10,000 a month through a fake care agency. Patrick knew, but allowed it as a way to keep her around. Mary felt her heart constrict, not for the money, but because her loved husband had been reduced to a transaction. A sharp knock at the door startled her. Mary stood, heart racing. She opened it to find Amelia stripped of her usual arrogance. No lipstick, no diamond earrings, just an oversized gray tracksuit and red-rimmed eyes. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Amelia said, her voice trembling but sharp. Mary stepped back, letting her in. "No, Amelia, I'm not enjoying any of this." Amelia paused, scanning the small apartment, her gaze landing on Patrick's letters. "Those letters," she said, voice low. "You think they prove you're better than me? Do you deserve more?" Mary took a deep breath, keeping her voice steady. "I don't need to prove anything. I married Patrick for him, not for money or status." Amelia gave a crooked laugh. "That's easy for you to say. I was there. Mary, I changed IV bags, checked the ventilator, and stayed up when he coughed until his voice gave out. Where were you every day?" Mary felt a stab in her chest. Not anger, but recognition. Amelia had been there, faithful, but not out of love, out of contract. "You were paid," Mary said evenly. $10,000 a month. I didn't pay to love him." Amelia froze, hands clenching into fists. "You think I married him for money?" "Maybe at first, but I stayed Mary. I visited when he was no longer the strong man you knew." Where were you when he needed you most?" The words cut like a knife. Mary remembered Patrick's final months when she left the hospital for a few days to handle paperwork to keep the family afloat. She returned, but those gaps left scars. "I wiped his mouth when he couldn't eat." Mary replied, voice trembling. "I held his hand when he was scared." "You sent flowers, Amelia. Beautiful flowers, but they don't replace love." Amelia turned away, eyes glistening. "You don't hate me," she said, almost a whisper. "That's worse." She walked out, not looking back, leaving Mary silent. Mary sat opening another letter from 2012. "Today you said you feared us growing old. I'm not afraid because you're still you, gray hair. I only fear you forgetting you're everything to me." Mary folded it. Tears falling. Patrick had foreseen the betrayal, not just Amelia's, but John's, the son she'd sacrificed everything to raise. She thought of John, his visit after the funeral, asking Mom, "You okay?" With averted eyes, Mary wanted to scream and ask why he had let Amelia manipulate everything, but she didn't. She'd learned from Patrick silence wasn't weakness, but waiting for the moment to speak the truth. She took a sheet of paper, writing a few lines for her grandchildren. "Liam, Lucy, Emma, if you ever read this, know I fought not to take money, but to keep your grandfather's memory." She folded it and placed it in the box beside the will. That night, Mary didn't sleep. She stood on the balcony watching Mission Street's twinkling lights. A text arrived from an unknown number. "Would those letters save you? Wait for the courtroom." Mary didn't reply. She knew Amelia was scared not of losing money but control. Mary recalled meeting Amelia at her and John's wedding. She was radiant and confident, but her eyes constantly scanned, calculating everyone's worth. Mary had tried to love her like a daughter, but now saw clearly Amelia didn't need love. She needed to win. Mary returned inside, opening another letter from 2014. "Mary, you were mad because I worked too much. But that night, you waited with a plate of burnt cookies. You didn't know I kept one to remember you always tried even when you failed." Mary laughed, tears falling. She remembered those cookies, trying to cheer Patrick after a long day, only for both to laugh at the kitchen's smoky mess. That was their love, imperfect but real. She took a pen, adding to the grandchildren's letter. "Learn from your grandfather, love isn't holding on, but letting others be themselves." Mary folded it and placed it in the box. The streetlights flickered outside, reminding her the fight wasn't over. But this time she wasn't afraid. She had the will, the letters, and most importantly herself, the woman Patrick always trusted, even when the world turned away. Under San Francisco's fading sunset, Mary Johnson stood in the supermarket parking lot on a coastal road, the salty breeze tousling her hair. She had bought some vegetables and simple ingredients for dinner, but her mind was tangled up by Patrick's letters and last night's confrontation with Amelia. Her daughter-in-law's words, "You don't hate me." That's worse, lingered like an unhealed cut. Mary didn't want to hate Amelia, but her betrayal and John's silence made her feel alone in a storm. Yet today, an unexpected light emerged from the grandson she once lulled to sleep with stories. Pushing her cart toward her car, Mary spotted Liam, her 16-year-old grandson, standing in a corner of the lot, kicking gravel lightly. Tall, with Patrick's deep brown eyes, his gaze was anxious, as if caught between adult lines. "Grandma," he called, voice hesitant, hands deep in his hoodie pockets. Mary stopped, smiling softly. "Liam, what are you doing here?" He shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Just wandering." "Mom, she's really stressed." Mary nodded, not probing. She knew Amelia was afraid not just of the will Mary found, but of the secret about the $10,000 a month she received through a fake care agency. Liam glanced at her, then pulled a small black unlabeled USB from his backpack. "I found this in Dad's stuff," he said, voice low, as if someone might hear. "Grandpa recorded it before he passed. I think you should see it." Mary took the USB, hands trembling slightly. She looked into Liam's eyes, seeing a sincerity she hadn't seen in John for years. "Have you watched it?" she asked. Liam shook his head. "I didn't dare. but I know it's essential. Grandpa, he talked about you a lot." Mary's heart tightened. She remembered evenings when Liam was little, sitting on her lap begging for tales of sea voyages she made up to make him laugh. Now he stood here not as a child, but as an ally. "I don't want to pick sides," Liam said, eyes down. "But Mom says you're trying to take all the money, and I don't believe it. Grandpa wouldn't abandon you." Mary gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, Liam. I'm not fighting for money. I'm fighting to keep what your grandpa left, not the estate, but the truth." Liam nodded, giving a small smile, then walked away, his tall frame fading into the sunset. Back at her apartment, Mary sat at the kitchen table plugging the USB into her old laptop. The screen lit up, revealing Patrick not in a polished suit like his work videos, but in an old flannel shirt sitting before a chessboard, the one he left to Liam. He looked straight at the camera, voice hoarse but firm. "If you're watching this, things have gone wrong. If you gave it to her, I'm sorry, Liam or Mary." Mary choked up, tears falling as she heard her husband's voice. "I made mistakes, but one thing I never got wrong, Mary. She's the most genuine person I know. Amelia. She's clever, but she treats people like investments. Mary doesn't. If anyone says I wasn't clear-headed when I wrote that, will show them this. I knew what I was doing." The video ended just a few minutes long, but enough to make Mary feel Patrick was sitting beside her, holding her hand, as in the old days. She recalled their last chess game when she beat him, and he laughed, "You cheat, but I love it." That was Patrick, never angry for long, always finding joy in small moments. Mary wiped her tears, calling Mr. Davis immediately. "I have a video," she said, voice steady. Patrick recorded it, stating his wishes clearly. "I want it used in court." Davis replied, "Send it to me. This could be the key, Mary." That night, Mary opened another letter from the box from 2008. "Mary, today you were mad because I forgot to pick up Liam from school. You said nothing, but I saw you quietly fixing his backpack. You always do the little things no one notices, and I love you for it." Mary smiled, recalling that day. She ran to the school, apologized to the teacher for the delay, then hugged Liam tightly. She sacrificed those small moments daily, not for recognition, but because that was how she loved her family. But John, her son, seemed to have forgotten. He stood behind Amelia, letting her mock his mother's sacrifices. Mary stepped onto the small balcony. San Francisco's night breeze carried salt and memories. She thought of Liam, his courage in bringing the USB. He didn't pick sides, but chose truth, what Mary was fighting for. She recalled a time when Liam at 5 cried over a lost toy. Mary searched the house, finding it under a couch. "You're a superhero, Grandma," he said, eyes shining. Now he'd given her another gift, not a toy, but hope. She went inside, took a sheet of paper, and added to the grandchildren's letter, "Liam, you showed me our family still has honest hearts. Hold on to that even when adults let you down." Mary folded it and placed it in the box. The streetlights flickered outside, reminding her that the fight continued. But Mary felt less alone with Patrick's video and Liam's support. She didn't want war, but if Amelia and John forced her to fight, she'd show them who she was, not with anger, but with undeniable truth. On a late summer afternoon, San Francisco glowed with soft sunlight filtering through the trees, illuminating the narrow street to Mary Johnson's apartment. She stood in the kitchen holding a cold coffee, her gaze fixed on the old brown box on the table. The video Liam, her grandson, brought last night lingered in her mind. Patrick, in his flannel shirt, sitting before the chessboard, speaking clearly of his love for her and distrust of Amelia, had ignited a new flame in Mary. Not anger, but resolve. She wasn't fighting to protect the will, but to preserve the memory of the husband who always saw her, even when the world turned away. Mary opened the box and pulled out another letter from 2013. "Today you stood under the oak tree saying, 'It's bigger than both of us combined.' I looked at you and thought, nothing is bigger than your heart." She smiled, recalling that afternoon sitting with Patrick on the wooden bench, listening to rustling leaves. They argued about fixing the roof, but held hands, savoring the moment in silence. These letters, Mary realized, weren't just love, but proof of their quiet sacrifices. She held the family, he held faith. but now her son John seemed to have forgotten letting Amelia turn his father's legacy into a power game. The phone rang, pulling Mary from her reverie. "Mr. Davis," the family lawyer spoke in a low, steady voice. "Mary Patrick's video is a decisive blow. I've sent it to the court, but Amelia's preparing a counterattack. She wants to turn the trial into a public circus, inviting the press." Mary clenched her hand, feeling the floor shake. "What does she want?" she asked. "To break you," Davis replied. "They'll claim Patrick wasn't lucid, that you manipulated him, but his video and letters say otherwise." Mary nodded, though he couldn't see. "Do what needs to be done, Davis. I'm not afraid." After the call, Mary stepped onto the balcony, looking down at the bustling Mission District. She thought of Amelia, her red-rimmed eyes last night, admitting she stayed with Patrick for money, but also for a twisted affection. Mary didn't hate Amelia, but couldn't forgive the betrayal not just to her but to Patrick, who paid to keep her there. She recalled his final days sitting by his bed, recounting their walks by the waterfront. While Amelia appeared with beautiful but cold flowers, Mary sacrificed sleep and health to care for him, while Amelia turned love into a contract. A soft but firm knock came at the door. Mary opened it, surprised to see John, his shoulders slumped as if carrying the world. Unshaven shirt wrinkled his eyes weary. "Mom," he said, voice hoarse. Mary nodded, inviting him in. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table where she once taught him math with dried spaghetti sticks. Silence hung heavy like San Francisco's fog. "I don't know what I'm doing," John finally said, rubbing his temples. "Amelia, she doesn't sleep. She checks the accounts every night, afraid you'll take everything." Mary looked at her son, seeing the boy who once chased her for a hug. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man caught between loyalty and fear. "You don't need to take everything," Mary said evenly. "Your father's will is fair, but you let Amelia decide for you." John bowed his head, silent. "She says you have letters," he said softly, "that you're using them to prove you're better than her." Mary shook her head. "They're not for proving. They're for remembering who your father was and who I was to him." John looked up, eyes red. "I didn't want this, Mom, but I'm scared of losing everything." Mary tilted her head, voice gentle but sharp. "If you lose, you start over. I did when I left your father in 1986. I learned to stand up. You haven't learned that yet." John winced as if her words were a blade. "Do you hate me?" he asked. Mary shook her head. "I don't hate you. I pity you." He stood, leaving without a goodbye. Mary didn't stop him, but her heart was heavy. She opened another letter from 2016, just before Patrick's stroke. "Mary, you said, 'I'm bad at saying I love you, but I understand you even when I'm clumsy. You don't need me to fix you. I want to be there and have always tried. I hope you know that.'" Mary pressed it to her chest. She remembered that year, angry at Patrick for working too much and missing their evenings. But he always returned with a tired smile and a tight hug. That was his love, quiet, enduring. Mary took paper, adding to the grandchildren's letter, "Your father is lost, but I hope he'll find his way. Don't be afraid to stand for truth, even if it hurts." She folded it and placed it in the box. Outside streetlights flickered, reminding her that the trial was near. Amelia wanted a circus, but Mary wasn't afraid. She had Patrick's video, the letters, and Liam's support. Most importantly, she had herself, the woman Patrick always trusted. Mary stood brewing fresh tea, not to drink, but to remind herself she was alive, fighting not for money, but for a love that never faded. The federal courthouse in downtown San Francisco smelled of burnt coffee and old paper, a cold space buzzing with scrutinizing glances. Mary Johnson walked in, clutching a thin folder containing Patrick's letters and the USB with his video. Soft light from large windows fell on her face, now 65, yet still carrying the resolve of a woman who had sacrificed her life for family. Today, the preliminary hearing will decide the fate of the valid will, which fairly divides the $46 million estate with 50% for her, unlike the forged one giving everything to John and Amelia. But Mary wasn't here for money. She was here to protect Patrick's memory and prove her sacrifices couldn't be erased. The courtroom was packed. Amelia entered with 2 lawyers, a middle-aged man in a gray suit and a young woman with eyes sharp as knives. She wore a navy business suit, blonde hair tied high, but her shoulders trembled slightly as if sensing the dangerous game ahead. John followed eyes down like a child caught in the act. Mary sat at Mr. Davis's table, the family lawyer and Patrick's old friend. He nodded, eyes calm but determined. "It'll be intense today," he whispered. Mary nodded. "I'm ready." Amelia's lawyer opened, voice sharp as a rehearsed speech. Mr. Patrick Johnson was no longer lucid when he signed the 2019 will. Medical reports show cognitive decline from 2018, and Mrs. Mary Johnson exploited that to manipulate his wishes. Mary felt a blood rush to her ears, but she stayed still. She looked at John, hoping for remorse, but he only gripped the table, eyes down. Amelia sat rigid, lips pursed, as if holding back a storm. Next was the first witness, Clara Patrick's former nurse. She took the stand, petite but unwavering. She said that Mr. Patrick was lucid when he signed the 2019 will. "He told me he feared Amelia would try to change things. He knew she received $10,000 a month through a fake agency, but he let her, wanting Mrs. Mary to have peace." Amelia's lawyer stood, trying to discredit her. "You're just a nurse, not a legal witness. How do you know his true intent?" Clara smiled faintly. "Because he trusted me. He said I was the only one who listened without calculating." Mary felt warmth in her chest. Clara wasn't just a witness, she was proof of the sincerity Patrick valued. When Mary's turn came, she stood walking to the stand without drama, only truth. She placed Patrick's letters before her. "My husband wasn't good with spoken love, but he wrote it here over 40 years ago. These show he knew who I was and wanted me protected." She handed the judge a letter from 2017. "Mary, you took off your wedding ring for a week. I didn't ask, knowing you'd put it back. And you did. That was enough for me." The judge read, face impassive as a statue, but Mary knew she was listening. Then Davis requested the video. The room fell silent as Patrick's voice filled it, hoarse but strong. "Mary is the only decision I have never regretted. If anyone says I wasn't lucid, they're wrong. Amelia thinks she's subtle, but I saw everything." Mary heard Amelia's chair shift as if her expensive dress grew tight. Amelia took the stand, starting confidently. "I loved him. I cared for him daily. I sacrificed time and health. But when Mary's lawyer asked, 'Why did he say in the video that you treated him like an investment?' Amelia paused, eyes glistening. 'Because he loved her more than me,' she said, voice breaking. Silence swept the room like a crack in glass. Mary didn't look at Amelia. She looked at the judge, then John, who still wouldn't meet her eyes. After the recess, a small figure appeared near the door. Liam, her grandson, in a hoodie, eyes wide. He quietly approached, whispering, "Grandma, I found this in Dad's storage." He handed her another USB, small and unlabeled. "You should see it before the next hearing." Mary gripped it, feeling its weight beyond its size. "Thank you," she said, voice soft but firm. Liam nodded, slipping out the side door like smoke. That night, Mary sat in her apartment, the desk lamp illuminating the USB. She hesitated, but plugged it into her laptop. In dim light, Patrick appeared in his old study, wearing the green sweater she'd knitted. "Mary, if you see this, things have gone wrong. I'm not good at saying I love you, but you're my home. Don't let them take that away." The short video made Mary feel he was there, holding her hand through the screen. She wiped tears, calling Davis. "We have another video. Patrick left it for me." She opened another letter from the box from 2011. "Mary, you were mad because I worked late, but you left the kitchen light on for me. You don't know how much I cherished that." She pressed it to her chest. These letters were her compass through the storm. She added to the grandchildren's letter, "Liam, you gave me hope. Remember, truth, even a small one, is stronger than lies." Mary looked out the window, San Francisco's lights twinkling. The trial wasn't over, but she knew she wasn't alone. She had Patrick, Liam, and herself, the woman who wouldn't let memory be erased. San Francisco basked in the gentle light of early morning fog, lingering over the steep streets. Mary Johnson sat in her small Mission District apartment, holding a mint tea, her gaze drifting to the brown box on the table. The second video Liam, her grandson, brought had been sent to Mr. Davis, the family lawyer, and was now her final weapon for the upcoming trial. Patrick's words in the video, "Mary is my home. Don't let them take that away," warmed her heart like a flame and reminded her this fight wasn't just for the will, but for honor, love, and herself. Amelia had turned the trial into a public circus, but Mary wasn't afraid. She was ready to end this story not with victory, but liberation. Mary stood stepping onto the balcony where the sea breeze carried salt and memories. She thought of John, her son, who appeared last night, eyes weary, admitting he feared losing everything. "Mom, I didn't want this," he said, but Mary replied, "You didn't stop her, John." His silence was heavier than words, but Liam, with Patrick's eyes, gave her hope. He didn't just bring the video, he understood that the family still had honest hearts, however small. She returned inside, opening another letter from the box from 2018, when Patrick's illness worsened. "Mary, you never complained when I forgot your name on the worst days. You just held my hand, and I knew you were home." Mary folded it, tears falling. She remembered Patrick's hazy gaze in those days, yet his hand still sought hers as if it were his last instinct. Amelia appeared more than but always with her phone, as if caring for him was a task. Mary sacrificed long nights and her dreams to be with him, but now Amelia wanted to erase that. Mary returned to the old suburban house where she and Patrick once lived. She didn't announce it, driving through familiar roads where John's childhood laughter once echoed. When she arrived, Liam stood in the front yard holding keys. "Mom's away," he said quietly. "You should go in alone." Mary nodded, stepping into the now foreign house. The porch still creaked, but the scent of cedar and lemon, her signature since 1983, lingered faintly. She walked the hallway, touching a dent in the wall from when John at 6 dropped a toy airplane. She'd covered it with a picture, but it was gone, leaving time's scar. Mary sat in Patrick's old armchair in the living room where he read napped and eventually passed. The chair creaked as if recognizing her. She closed her eyes, seeing Patrick, not the frail man in the hospital, but the Patrick of 1990, hair graying, laughing as she tried to teach him to dance in the kitchen. "You're terrible, but I love it," he said. Mary opened her eyes, smiling. She went to the bedroom, opening the drawer Patrick never let her clean. Inside were scattered papers, broken pens, and a folded napkin with 3 handwritten words. "I choose you." No date, no explanation, just a promise in ink. Mary took the napkin to the backyard, sitting on the wooden bench under the oak. The tree was now massive, its branches shading the sky. She remembered planting it when pregnant with John Patrick, joking that it would be our legacy. Their true legacy wasn't the tree, but the letters, videos, and truth she defended. Mary thought of Amelia, her red-rimmed eyes admitting she stayed with Patrick for money, but also a warped affection. Mary didn't forgive, but she no longer wanted to hold pain. Hate was too loud, and she was tired of the noise. She returned to her apartment, adding to the grandchildren's letter, "Liam, Lucy. Emma, don't let anyone rewrite your story. Your grandfather chose me, not because I was perfect, but because I was real. Choose truth, even if it's hard." Mary folded it and placed it in the box. Her phone buzzed. Davis called Mary. "The second video's been accepted as evidence." "Amelia's panicking. They want to negotiate before the final hearing, but you should see it through." Mary nodded. "No deals. I like the truth heard." Mary sat by the window that night, watching San Francisco's twinkling lights. She opened the last letter from 2019, just before Patrick lost his voice. "Mary, you said you feared losing me. But I feared you forgetting you're stronger than anything. Don't let them make you small." She pressed it to her chest. Patrick's words were a lighthouse guiding her through the storm. She thought of John, his silence, and decided not to force him to choose sides. But she'd show him she, the mother-wife woman, was never small. Mary stood taking an old handkerchief, writing, "I choose me." She placed it beside Patrick's napkin, a response after all these years. The final hearing was coming, and Amelia could bring an army of lawyers, but Mary wasn't afraid. She had the letters, 2 videos, and the undeniable truth. Most importantly, she had herself the woman Patrick chose, and now she decided. San Francisco's dawn was radiant, yet gentle sunlight piercing the fog, illuminating Mary Johnson's small Mission District apartment. She sat by the window, holding a mint tea, her gaze resting on the brown box, now a treasure trove of memories. The trial ended a week ago, and Patrick's valid will, fairly dividing the $46 million estate with 50% for Mary, was upheld. Amelia, with her army of lawyers and perfect smile, lost not for lack of strategy, but because Patrick's truth, through his letters and 2 videos, was stronger than any lie. Yet Mary didn't feel victorious. She felt liberated, as if a long-locked door had opened, letting her step into a new world, not of wealth, but of herself. She opened the box, pulling out the final letter, undated Mary, "You'll outlive me, because your heart is stronger. If the world isn't kind, remember you're steel bending but never breaking." Mary folded it, pressing it to her chest. Patrick's words were more than love. They were a reminder that she was never small, despite Amelia and John's attempts to make her believe so. The trial didn't just restore her share of the estate. It restored her honor, truth, and self, the woman who sacrificed her life for family, but now chose herself. Mary stood stepping onto the balcony where the sea breeze carried salt and memories. She thought of John, her son, who gave a slight nod after the trial, a small but meaningful gesture. He said nothing, but Mary didn't need words. She knew he was grappling with himself, with Amelia, with the mistakes he let happen. Mary didn't fully forgive, but she held no hatred. She recalled an afternoon in 1988 when John, then 8, broke her favorite vase. She didn't scold, only hugged him, saying, "Mistakes don't make you less. How you fix them matters."